Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Buddhya Visuddhya Yukto Trityatmanam Iyam Yacha Shabadin Vishayam Shtva Ragadvesha Vidasya Cha Vivikta Sevilagvasi Ashi Yata Vakayamanasaha Dhyana Yoga Paro Nityam Vairagyam Samupashutaha Ahankaram Balam Darpam Kamam Krodam Parigraham Vimuchya Nirmaha Shanto Brahma Bhuyaya Kalpate.
Being purified by his intelligence and controlling the mind with determination, giving up the objects of sense gratification, being freed from attachment and hatred, one who lives in a secluded place, who eats little, who controls his body, mind, and power of speech, who is always in trance, and who is detached, free from false ego, false strength, false pride, lust, anger, and acceptance of material things, free from false proprietorship, and peaceful, such a person is certainly elevated to the position of self-realization.
Brahmabhuta prasanatma nasho chatina pangshati samasarveshu bhuteshu madbhaktim labhate param.
One who is thus transcendentally situated at once realizes the supreme Brahman and becomes fully joyful. He never laments or desires to have anything. He is equally disposed toward every living entity. In that state, he attains pure devotional service unto me.
Bhaktiya mamam vijanati yavan yashashmi tatvataha tato mam tatvato gyatva vishate tadanantaram.
One can understand me as I am, as the supreme personality of Godhead, only by devotional service. And when one is in full consciousness of me, by such devotion, he can enter into the kingdom of God.
Sarvakarmani api sada kurvano madhyapashrayaha matprasadadavapnoti shashvatam padamavyayam.
Though engaged in all kinds of activities, my pure devotee under my protection reaches the eternal and imperishable abode by my grace.
Chetasa sarvakarmani mai sanyasya matparaha buddhi yogam upashritya machita satatam bhava.
In all activities, just depend on me and work always under my protection in such devotional service. Be fully conscious of me.
Machita sarvadurgani matprasadat tarishyasi atachet pamahankaran nashosyasi vinangshasi.
If you become conscious of me, you will pass over all the obstacles of conditioned life by my grace. If, however, you do not work in such consciousness, but act through false ego, not hearing me, you will be lost.
Yadahankara mashritya nayotyati manyase misyesha vyavasayaste prakrutistvam niyakshati.
If you do not act according to my direction and you do not fight, then you will be falsely directed by your nature. You will have to be engaged in warfare.
Svabhavajena kunteya nibadasvena karmana kartum nachasyan mohat karishyasya vashopitat.
Which verse are we on?
I think we are on verse 60.
60.
Under illusion, you are now declining to act according to my direction, but compelled by the work born of your own nature, you will act all the same, O son of Kunti.
Ishvara sarvabhutanam hridaya arjuna tishtati brahmayan sarvabhutani yantra rudani mayaya.
The Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart, O Arjuna, and is directing the wanderings of all living entities who are seated as on a machine made of the material energy.
What's your name?
Tameva Sharanam Gacha Sarabhavena Bharata Prasadat Param Shantim Stana Prapsyasi Shashvatam.
Earth's kind of Bharata, surrender unto him utterly. By his grace you will attain transcendental peace and the supreme eternal abode.
Iti te Jnanam Akyatam Guyad Guyataram Maya Vimshyeta Disheshina Yatecha Shitata Kuru.
Thus I have explained to you knowledge still more confidential. Deliberate on this fully, and then do what you wish to do.
Sarvaguyatamam Bhuya Shinu me Paramam Vachaha Ishtoshi me Dudam Iti Tato Vakshami te Hitam.
Because you are my dear friend, I am speaking to you by my supreme instruction, the most confidential knowledge of all. Hear this from me, for it is for your benefit.
Manmunava Pava Madbhakto Madhya Jimam Namaskuru Mame Veshashi Satyam Te Bodhijane Priyoshine.
Always think of me, become my devotee, worship me, and offer your homage unto me. Thus you will come to me without fail. I promise you this because you are my very dear friend.
Sarvadharmam Parityaja Mamekam Sharanam Vraja Aham Tvam Sarvapapebhyo Makshayishami Mastachaha.
Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. Do not fear.
Idam te nata paskaya nabhaktaya kadachana nacha shushrusave vachyam nacha mam yobayashyati.
This confidential knowledge may never be explained to those who are not austere, or devoted, or engaged in devotional service, nor to one who is envious of me.
Idam paramam guhyam madbhakteshva adashyati bhaktim mai param kritva mame veshyati asamshayaha.
One who explains the supreme secret to the devotees, pure devotional service is guaranteed, and at the end he will come back to me.
Nacha tasman manusyeshu kashin me priya kritatmaha pavita nacha me tasmad. Prabhuji, could you please move down? Anyaha priyataro bhuvi.
There is no servant in this world more dear to me than he, nor will there ever be one more dear.
Adyashite cha imam dharmayam samvadam avayoho jnana yagyena tenham ishtasyam iti me matihi.
And I declare that he who studies this sacred conversation of ours worships me by his intelligence.
Shadavan anusayascha shrinyudapi naraha sobi mukta shubalokan prapnuyat punya karmanam.
And one who listens with faith and without envy becomes free from sinful reactions and attains to the auspicious planets where the pious
Kachid etat chutam parta dvaye kagrena chetasha kachid agyan samuhaha pranashtaste dhananjaya.
O son of Pritha, O conqueror of wealth, have you heard this with an attentive mind, and are your ignorance and illusions now dispelled?
Arjuna vacha nashtamoham smritir labda tat dvat prasadam mayuchita shitosmi kata sandeha karishye vachanam tat.
Arjuna said, My dear Krishna, O infallible one, my illusion is now gone. I have regained my memory by your mercy. I am now firm and free from doubt, and am prepared to act according to your instructions.
Sanjaya Vacha Atiham Vasudevasya Pratasya Cha Mahatmanaha Sambaram Imam Ashusham Adbhutam Maharshanam.
Sanjaya said, "Thus have I heard the conversation of two great souls, Krishna and Arjuna, and so wonderful is that message that my hair is standing on end."
Vyasaprasadat Shrutvan Etad Maham Param Yogam Yogeshwarat Krishnat Sakshat Katyataha Swayam.
By the mercy of Vyasa, I have heard that these most confidential talks, directly from the master of all mysticism, Krishna, who was speaking personally to Arjuna.
Rajan Samsmritya Samvadam Mamadbhutam Keshavarjuna Yo Punyam Rishyami Cha Muhurmuhu.
O King, as I repeatedly recall this wondrous and holy dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna, I take pleasure being thrilled at every moment.
Tacha Samsmritya Rupamatya Bhutam Harehe Vishmayo Me Mahan Rajan Rishyami Cha Puna.
O King, as I remember the wonderful form of Lord Krishna, I am struck with wonder more and more, and I rejoice again and again.
Yatra Yogeshvara Krishno Yatra Parto Dhanurdaraha Tatra Shir Vijayo Bhutir Dhruva Nitir Mama.
Wherever there is Krishna, the master of all mystics, and wherever there is Arjuna, the supreme archer, there will also be opulence, victory, extraordinary power, and morality. That is my opinion.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Shridham and Yash. You had a wonderful recitation today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yatra Yogeshwaraha Krishno Yatra Partho Dhanurdharaha Tatra Shir Vijayo Bhutir Dhruva Nitir Matir Ma. I think in my opinion, Krishna's opinion is the best opinion. What does he say? Wherever there is Krishna, the master of all mystics, and wherever there is Arjun, supreme archer, there will also be definitely opulence, victory, extraordinary power, and morality. This is amazing. This is a most wonderful part of Gita, where devotees can really be sure that if Krishna is with us, then there's nothing to be worried about. There's opulence, there's victory, there's extraordinary power and morality. Thank you both, Sridham and Yash, for reading out this wonderful recitation. We'll start with the class now. Okay. Can you see my screen with verses here?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay, thank you. So today's verse is 18.61, very, very famous verse. And Srila Prabhupada has always quoted this verse every now and then, hundreds and thousands of times. So we'll just read the verse quickly, and then we'll read our Praniti prayers, and then we'll have a quick discussion on the verse. So it's verse number 61, chapter number 18. Verse number 61, chapter number 18, Bhagavad Gita. Ishvaraha sarva bhutanam hrideshe arjuna tishtati brahmayan sarva bhutani yantarudani mayaya. The Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart, O Arjun, and is directing the wanderings of all living entities who are seated as on a machine made of the material energy. So if there are devotees who need to mute, please mute yourself, because it's causing some sort of background sound, not for me, but for other devotees. It may be a disturbance. Thank you very much. So Supreme Lord situated in everyone's heart, O Arjun, and is directing the wandering of all living entities who are seated as on a machine made of the material energy. Arjun was not the supreme knower, and his decision to fight or not to fight was confined to his limited discretion. Lord Krishna instructed that the individual is not all in all. Supreme Personality of Godhead, or He Himself, Krishna, as the localized supersoul, sits in the heart, directing the living beings. After changing bodies, the living entity forgets his past deeds, but the supersoul, as the knower of the past, present, and future, remains the witness of all his activities. Therefore, all the activities of living entities are directed by this supersoul. Living entity gets whatever he deserves and is carried by the material body, which is created in the material energy under the direction of the supersoul. As soon as a living entity is placed in a particular type of a body, he has to work under the spell of that bodily situation. A person seated in a high-speed motor car goes faster than one seated on a slower car. Though living entities, the drivers may be the same. Similarly, by the order of the Supreme Soul, material nature fashions a particular type of body to a particular type of living entity, so that he may work according to his past desires. Living entity is not independent. One should not think himself independent of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The individual is always under the Lord's control. Therefore, one's duty is to surrender, and that is the injunction of the next verse. Ishvara sarvabhutanam hrideshe arjuna tishtati brahmanya sarvabhutani yantra rudani mayaya Om Agyanam Timrindasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Sapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam सहगना रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य देवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपदां सहगना ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितं हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपेश गोपिका कांता राधकांता नमोस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी श्री राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी विश्वभानु सुते देवी प्रणमामि हरि प्रिये वंचाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So in this verse, Krishna is sharing one of the most confidential, or rather confidential part of the absolute knowledge. Now this fact, first of all, in chapter 2, Krishna has already described that Dehino vasmin yatha dehe kaumaram yavanam jara tatha dehantara prapti dhiras tatnamoyate. In this verse, Krishna has already explained that this living entity is seated in a body, and he has mentioned that the body goes through these stages of birth, growth, producing byproducts, old age, and die or death. And death is nothing but change of the body. So this concept of body being changeable has already been embedded in the very beginning of the conversation with Arjun. Now, at that point of time, Krishna did not reveal that there is another living being in the body. Krishna is only talking about that there is a living being, the soul in the body. He's not talking about that there's a super soul in the body. Come to chapter 18, and in between elsewhere also, we'll bring it out in our conversation. Krishna did mention about how the super soul is also seated in the same body. And that's what is Krishna establishing here, and Srila Prabhupada also quotes this verse, Hridesha Arjuna Tishthati. I'm seated in the heart. I'm seated in the heart. That's how and I'm guiding the wanderings. Brahmayan Sarva Bhutani. Sarva Bhutani. All the living entities. Brahmayan. Brahmayan means who's traveling. Brahman Brahmite, Kaun hai Bhagavan Ji. So this Brahman word is there. Brahman means traveling around. Kaun hai Bhagavan Ji. Guru Krishna Kripa Pai Bhakti Lata Bij. So this Brahmayan, this traveling of this movement is being described here. Brahmayan Sarva Bhutani. Krishna is saying all the living entities, all across the universe, not just the planet Earth, not just the human species, in all the species, beginning from the trees up to the most evolved living entity, which is human being, and not only on this planet, but on other planets like demigods, Gandharvas, and in the hellish planets like demoniac personalities. All of them are traveling. Brahmana Sarva Bhutani. If we see and observe this material world, everything is in a movement. If we look at Surya, Chandra, which is sun, moon, we look at planet Earth, Prithvi, everything is just moving constantly. We look at the motion of time, it's the past, present, and future is moving. We look at ocean, rivers, air, everything is just moving. As well as if we look internally, our minds, they are just moving. That's the nature of this world. And in this material world where everything is moving, when something is moving, how can it be stationary? It will not be stationary. Therefore, it's changing all the time. It's changing. Asat, therefore, it is not eternal. It's so temporary and so unreal. Looks like real, but so unreal. This is the knowledge. If Krishna does not impart this knowledge, the first, that the soul is seated in the heart, and second, that the super soul is seated in the heart. There is no other way to realize this truth. So, Ishvara Sarva Bhutana Hridesha Arjun Tishtati. By this line, he's establishing that the living being is seated in the heart. Brahmayam Sarva Bhutani Yantarudani Mayaya. And this yantra, which is this body compared to a machine, is made up of material energy or maya. What are these material energies? We understand material energies are earth, fire, water, air, ether, and there are subtle elements also. So there is a gross element which we can touch, which we can feel, we can see. And then there are subtle elements like soul is there, and like intelligence is there, like mind is there. And then who is the controller, who is driving this? That's the soul himself. So, Yantra Runani Maya. And this is a beautiful machine that Krishna has created for us. Now, however truth is there, this is still living entities never able to realize this. That's what's happening. I was just talking to a friend of mine. He's a doctor and was explaining the process of how coronavirus comes and attack us. Coronavirus has these spikes, and these spikes are protein spikes, and they enter through the mouth into the lungs, and in lung membrane, it does not allow the foreign elements to come and sit. But there are certain areas where there is an opening where the protein element can go inside. Now, this coronavirus has this protein element. It goes inside, and within the lung, when it goes inside, there is sort of a mechanism of replication. Now, it's like a photocopy machine. Now, when this particular virus goes inside, the replication happens. This replication model that is seated in the lung starts replicating because it cannot see the difference between what is the right or what is the wrong. Whatever comes in, it starts replicating, assuming that it has already come in, therefore it's the right source. So it's quite amazing that when this virus multiplies itself, At that point in time, the antibodies don't generate, but these antibodies, which is a defense mechanism, are unable to generate at the speed of what the virus can generate. Because virus has a single strand, and therefore the antibodies, what they do, they go and plug these protein points, which are hooks on the coronavirus. Now, these antibodies are fighting with this virus. When we take some sort of medicines, or when we say the immune system is good, the antibodies kind of increases in number, and they can plug in all the points of coronavirus protein parts, and that's how the virus is defeated. It cannot stay attached in the lungs, and it has to leave the body and gradually dies. Now, so much mechanism is happening inside the body. The scientists are trying to obviously develop the vaccines, etc., to counteract and give that kind of antibodies in the body so that we can be prepared to fight. Now, just imagine the amount of work that's happening within the body is unsurmountable. But do we get to know about it? We only get to know about it when we get some fever, when we get some reactions. Now, isn't it fascinating that when in our body we are having so much of movement, so much of turbulence, so much of activity, if you just listen to the heart through the stethoscope, you will see you will hear as if the waves of ocean are there, and it's a huge sound coming through, as if the waves of ocean are striking the rocks. And you amplify that sound, and this is how exactly it feels. So such heavy pressure and force, heart is pumping out the blood into the body, and that's getting circulated all over. And we don't even know about it, really. We have to concentrate hard to see, oh, my heart is beating. Yes, it's beating. What a machine. Yantra Rudani Maya. What a machine is created by Krishna. This is a machine that can replicate its own type through the process of reproduction. There is no machine that scientists can produce who can replicate through the biological process of reproduction. Self-sustaining cycle of birth, death, old age, disease is already set in. Unfortunately, living entity is so forgettable, so unaware that he's unable to see the science behind it, the spiritual science behind it. That is what Krishna is presenting here. He's saying that I am guiding the wanderings of the living entity. What are these wanderings? This wandering is actually from one body to the another. As per the desire of the living entity, he gets another body, yet another body. And like that, 8.4 million species are presented in the scriptures, wherein one conditioned soul can go and continue to fulfill his desires. There are bodies of all kinds that has been created, and that we cannot just imagine. The kind of facilities given to these bodies are far higher for enjoyment, many times much higher than human senses. So this kind of facility is created. Now, what is the difference between a dead matter and the body, which is yantra? Because the soul is seated in that body, it is organically growing. That's the only difference. Otherwise, what is there in the body? We'll perhaps read about we'll perhaps know about it a bit more. I just want to focus this particular verse here. In verse 10, in chapter 10, verse 20, Krishna is saying, Ahamatma Gudakesha Sarva Bhutasya Sthitaha Aham Adishya Madhyam Cha Bhutanamante Evacha. Krishna is saying again here, he's establishing the same fact. I am the super soul, O Arjun, seated in the hearts of all living entities. I am the beginning, the middle, and the end of all beings. So Krishna is ascertaining this point, that he is the super soul in the heart. And yet another place, as we go through the session today, we will see that how Krishna is describing, or scriptures are describing, that living entity is seated in the heart, as well as the super soul is seated in the heart. A super soul is guiding, giving the knowledge, and imparting that know-how to the living entity as per the desires. They are compared, the body, the soul, and the super soul. These three things are compared from a distance as if you're looking at a green tree. And within green tree, there are two birds. One bird is continuously eating the fruits of the tree, and the other bird is just silently witnessing and guiding this particular other bird. And this is how the analogy has been given. And therefore, from a distance, it looks like just one tree. Like when we see a body, we don't even see the soul, we don't see the super soul, we just see the body. And that is what we think what we are. But that's not the fact. There is more behind it. Now, so there's a class of devotees, yogis, through yoga practices, they realize this aspect of the truth. But prior to that, Krishna is saying that not only that I'm seated in the heart, he's mentioning that where all and how his presence can be felt. If you can't see that, but can you see this? He's saying, Rasoham apsu konteya prabhashmi shashi suryo pranavah sarva vedeshu shabdah khe paurusham rishu. O son of Kunti, I'm the taste of water, light of the sun and the moon, the syllable Om in the Vedic mantras. I am the sound in ether and ability in men. In this chapter 7, he's spoken series of verses wherein he's describing how he can be felt or experienced. Punyogandha prithivyam tateja tacha tejascha ashmi vibhavasu jivanam sarva bhuteshu tapaschaspati tapaschasmi tapasvishu. I'm the original fragrance of the earth. So if you see, if you just put a seed, which is a decode basically, into the earth, when you put rose seed, you get rose fragrance. When you put mango seeds, you get mango fragrance. You can get all kinds of fragrances, lavender fragrance. You just imagine the fragrances. All you have to do, the code which is created by Krishna himself, you have to just put that into the earth, and the earth gives all kinds of fragrances. And that's so amazing. I am the heat and fire. I'm the life of all that lives, and I am the penances of all ascetics. So wherever we see a lot of penance, that's what Krishna is saying, I am this. Whenever we see life, we are able to see God. Wherever there is heat, which is nourishing us in the fire, that's Krishna is saying is me. Because Krishna is seated in the stomach, in the tummy, where his digestive fire, he's digesting all the things that we are taking inside our body to nourish our body. Bijam mam sarva bhutanam vidhi partha sanatanam buddhir buddhimatam smi tejas tejasinam aham. O son of Pratha, know that I am the original seed of all existence, the intelligence of the intelligent, and the prowess of all powerful men. So very clearly, because he's saying I'm the ability in men. So whatever intelligence a living entity has is due to Krishna's presence, and that's Krishna's expression and the prowess of the powerful men. Then he goes, Balam balvatam chaham kama raga vivarjitam dharma viruddha bhuteshu kamo asmi bharat rishiba. I'm the strength of the strong, devoid of passion and desire. So much that he's saying I'm the sex life, which is not contrary to religious principles. Oh, Arjun. And he says, Yacha eva satvika bhava rajastamascha ye mat eveti tana vidhi natva aham teshu te mai. Know that all states of being, goodness, passion, ignorance, are manifested by my energy. I'm in one sense everything. I'm in one sense everything, but I am independent. I'm not under the modes of nature, for they, on the contrary, are within me. And that's a beautiful thing that Krishna is saying, that although everything and anything is his manifestation, still he is not a part of that. He's like sky who's containing everything within, but because it's all under the sky, but sky is not those elements. So similarly, Krishna is like that. Now Krishna is also describing in chapter 6, 29th verse, Sarvabhutastham atmanam sarvabhutani cha atmani ikshate yoga yuktatma sarvatra samdarshanah. A true yogi observes me in all beings and also sees every being in me. Indeed, the self-realized person sees me the same Supreme Lord everywhere. Now, this ties up with the verse that we are discussing today, which is saying, Ishvara sarva bhutanam hrideshe arjuna tishtati. So this yogi is able to see this super soul everywhere in every living entity. And that is sarva, he's sarva bhutastatmatmanam. So basically, he's seeing this in every living entity. And that is the samdarshana part. He's able to see that everybody is equal without, irrespective of what yantra he's sitting on. It does not matter. It's a male body, it's a female body, it's a Brahmin body, it's a Indian body, it's a American body. It does not matter really, because for him, that living entity is beyond this material manifestation, and he's the soul. Now, the beauty of the super soul is being described here, which I have taken from 13:15 of Bhagavad Gita. It says, Sarvendriya Gunabhasham Sarvendriya Vivarjitam Asaktam Sarva Bhritcha Eva Nirgunam Gunabhoktarcha. Super soul is the original source of all senses, yet he is without senses. He is unattached, although he is the maintainer of all living beings. He transcends the modes of nature. At the prime time, he is the master of all the material modes of nature. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean that super soul has no form? Super soul cannot have senses, so he cannot feel anything? We have to remember the senses are actually nothing but a way to approach the sense objects. Because the sense objects are material, therefore the senses are also material. And because there is a link between sense object and senses, for example, I can only smell through the nose. If there is nice smell, I can smell it, and if it's a bad smell, I can smell it. I can't touch with my nose because nose functionality is to smell. But when there is something to touch, then I can touch it through my skin. But I can't smell through my skin, you see. So there's these combinations of matter. These are all material. Whereas Krishna doesn't have material senses. He has spiritual hands. He has spiritual legs. He has everything is spiritual. He's not conditioned. His brain, his mind is not material mind. Therefore, he sees everything, the past, the present, the future. And he's seated in the heart of all living entities as an expansion. And therefore, he is complete in himself. He is beyond the gunas. He is nirguna. Nirguna does not mean that he has got material. He hasn't got any gunas, qualities. He is not binded by the material qualities. He is far and superior. This is the expression that has been given. Yet at another place, 7th chapter, 21st, Krishna is again establishing this. Yo yo yam yam tanum bhakta, yo yo yam yam tanum bhakta, shraddhyarchitumukshati, tasya tasya chalam shraddham tame eva vidhami aham. I am in everyone's heart as the super soul. As soon as one desires to worship some demigod, I make his faith steady so that he can devote himself to that particular deity. Now, this is the super soul who is establishing or fundamentally strengthening the faith of living entity in whatever they're doing. This is quite, according to the scriptures, worshipping of demigods, but it's not the supremost thing. So Krishna is so kind. Okay, you want to gain something material, then therefore you're worshipping demigods. Therefore, you need to have faith in the demigods. And Krishna is saying that I, who is seated in the heart, I am developing that faith into the particular deity for a living entity. There was this wonderful conversation I picked up, and there is a presence of Vishnujan Swami, Tamal Krishna Maharaj, and Revati Nandan Prabhu, Govinda Dasi, and Srimati Mataji. There's a beautiful conversation happening. It's a long conversation on the chapter 2 between 19 and 25. And the same question is being asked here by Srimati Mataji. Is asking, in Chaitanya Chitamrita, you wrote that Krishna has no arms or legs as we have arms and legs. And his spiritual body and the other is the same. Prabhupada is saying, he has got spiritual arms, spiritual legs. I never said that he has no arms and legs, Srimati. It said that he has no arms and legs as we know arms and legs. Prabhupada, yes. That is the statement in the Vedas. Apani pado javano grahita. This is Sweta Shatra Upanishad 319. Supreme Lord has no material hands and feet, but accepts whatever is offered to him and moves very quickly. Supreme Person has no material ear, eye, but sees and hears everything. He is the knower of everything, and he is all that is to be known. It is said he is the best and greatest of all persons. So here, of course, Srila Prabhupada has now further gone and explained that how Supreme Lord is manifesting himself everywhere. So we can see, I'll read one or two more lines here. He has no hands like us, limited hands, but that does not mean he has no hand. He has hands unlimited. Unlimitedly, he can stretch that we cannot conceive because we have got the 3 feet hand. Krishna must have at least 4 feet. That's all. That's frog philosophy. Krishna Prabhupada always gives this example of frog philosophy. In the well, frog can imagine that what is the size of the ocean. He can say 4 times, 10 times, 100 times. He cannot fathom that the ocean is unlimited. Similarly, living entity who's got 3 feet hand or 2 feet hand cannot fathom the unlimited nature of Krishna. Simply imagining, Krishna may be very great. So we have got these 3 feet. Krishna, let him have 6 feet. That's all. But we cannot imagine how long his hand is. Therefore, his hand cannot be compared with the material hand. He has no material hand. This is a version of Veda. But he has a hand that you cannot measure. Just like Arjun could not measure when he showed universal form. When Krishna showed universal form to Arjun, he could not measure. Arjun could not measure. And the same thing is further on this particular verse, Prabhupada is explaining that how the soul is seated in this yantra, which is made of the Maya. And he's explaining here, sometimes we are getting the body of a cat, a dog, sometimes so many things, plants, aquatics, there are 8,400,000. And that's how we are wandering in this whole sea of material energy. And we're taking from one body to another body. Ahar, nidra, bhay, maithuna. Where to find food, where to get sleep, how to have sex life, etc. And this is whole human life is going like a waste in chasing the sense objects. However, the living entity is not able to understand its true nature. It continues to feel and identifies itself as this body. Now, according to the Ayurveda, in this particular verse, yasatma buddhi kun petru dhatuke swadhiya kalatra tishubhoma yadiya yatirtha buddhi salile nakrichi janesha vigneshu sa eva gokharaha. Those people who understand themselves to be body, they are compared to Gokaraha, like an ass or a cow. One who identifies himself as inert body composed of mucus, bile, and air, which is Pitta, Kapha, Vata, who assumes his wife and family as permanent as his own, who thinks an earthen image or the land of his birth is worshipable, or who sees a place of pilgrimage as merely the water there, who never identify himself with feels kinship with worships or even visits those who are wise in spiritual truth. Such persons are no better than a cow or an ass. This is what Srila Prabhupada has, this verse is saying, and Prabhupada has described it further. It's already 8:30. There was a beautiful prayers from Bhagavatam by Prachetas, or rather Daksha Prajapati, which are called as Hamsaguhya prayers, wherein he is explaining at how Supreme Personality of Godhead is situated as the super soul. So in the core of the heart of all living entity. And this fact is just established everywhere by the Lord himself and his devotees also. In this particular verse, where when the Prachetas, they were worshipping or they were pleasing the Supreme Lord under the sea, when they came out of the sea, they saw that all over the places, so many trees and vegetables have come about. Prachetas were son of Prachin Bari, and these were 10 sons of Prachin Bari, and they were performing austerities. When they came out of the water, when they found so much of vegetation, they became quite annoyed and angry that everywhere the vegetation has grown about. So, so they started burning them by producing fire and air from their mouth. And when they were doing so, the moon god, who is the caretaker of all the vegetation, we understand from Gita that it is due to the moonlight that there is a beautiful taste in the vegetables and the fruits that we eat. Now, moon god being the very caretaker, he comes and he starts consoling these Prachetas, and he says, this is a statement by him, Antardehe Shubhutanam Atmaste Haririshwaraha Sarvam Tat Dishinyam Ikshadam Evam Vasatosito Hai Asau. Supreme Personality of Godhead is situated as the super soul within the core of heart of all living entities, moving or non-moving, including man, bird, animal, trees. Therefore, you should consider everybody a residence or a temple of the Lord. By such vision, you will satisfy the Lord. You should not angrily kill these living entities in the forms of trees. Now, Soma understands that these Prachetas, they are realized soul, but they are angry. And therefore, he's just telling them, all they know it, of course, he's just reminding them. Because we just read that a super soul can be easily perceived by the yogis, and they were the advanced yogis. They could easily perceive that. Then, so the moon god got very, initially he tried to please them, and later on, moon god, he gave one of the Apsara's daughter to the Prachetas in marriage, and all of them, then they begotten a child in the womb of that daughter of the Apsara, and the birth of Daksha Prajapati. Now, this Daksha Prajapati later on gives birth to many species of lives on the planet. And when he was not satisfied with his own progeny, he goes to this place called as Aghamarshana, wherein it was a mountain wherein he prays to the Lord and he performs austerities. And those prayers in Bhagavatam, they are known as Hamsaguhya prayers. In those prayers, Prachetas, the Daksha Prajapati, he is glorifying the Lord. And there also he's saying the same thing. See, there's a complete consistency in what we hear from the Lord, what we hear from the devotees, what we hear from the moon god. So the truth is established at many places, which is the same truth. Herein, he's saying, Nayasya Sakham Purushova Eti Sakhyuhu Sakhavasansam Vasataha Puresam Asmin Guno Yatha Gudino Vyakta Drishtei Istasmai Maheshai Namaskaromi. As the sense objects cannot understand how the senses perceive them, so the conditioned soul, although residing in his body along with super soul, cannot understand how Supreme Spiritual Person, the master of the material creation, directs his senses. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Person. A beautiful analogy is given. Sense objects will never get to know how senses are perceiving them. Similarly, the soul is never able to figure out that how the super soul is always guiding him and always being on his side, birth after birth. And then another analogy is given here. I'll not read the verse as time is going away. The analogy is saying, just like the learned Brahmanas, they can extract the dormant fire from the wood through the chanting of mantras. Similarly, the devotees of the Lord, they can very easily, they can by their own austerities and tapa, they can bring or extract out the nature of the Lord, or they can perceive the nature of the Lord within the supreme, within the living being. And that's how, just like that fire in the wood, they can see it, see the super soul in the heart. Okay, so I think I'll come to the conclusive verses here. How do we perceive the Lord? How do we perceive? Atah Sri Krishna namadi na bhaved grayam indriya sevan mukho hi jivadyaya swam eva spruta. This is from Nectar of Devotion, which we understand is how do we purify our senses? By chanting the holy names of the Lord and by eating prasadam. These are two things that has been mentioned. Don't eat anything which is not offered to the Lord, and let the tongue chant Krishna's holy name all the time. No one can understand the transcendental nature of the name, form, quality, and pastimes of Krishna through the materially contaminated senses. But one, when becomes spiritually saturated by transcendental service to the Lord, then the name, form, quality, and pastimes of the Lord are revealed to him. You see, they are revealed to him. It is not in his power that he can find out about the Lord. The Lord can reveal. And when the Lord reveals, then the devotee is described in Brahma Samhita like this. Premanjana charita bhakti vilochanena santaha sadaiv hridesh vilokayanti yam shyama sundara chinta guna sarupam govindamadi purusham tam aham bhajami. So the ointment of devotion in the eye of the devotee is easily able to see the presence of the Lord in everybody, and he can see the Shyams in the form of Krishna himself. This is how the description is. So Daksha Prajapati, when he saw the Lord finally appeared before him after hearing this Hamsa prayers. When he saw the Lord, he became so joyful. That's the natural response or natural byproduct or reaction, whatever you want to say. As rivers are filled by water flowing from a mountain, all of Daksha's senses were filled with pleasure because of, so these are purified senses, which we just talked about. In such purified senses, one can feel the spiritual pleasure. Because of his highly elevated happiness, Daksha could not say anything, but simply remained flat on the ground. So, this is how one can perceive the presence of the Lord. The Lord's presence in the heart is very confidential knowledge. It's not revealed to everybody, even though one can understand theoretically, but revelation or the realization will not come. It will only come when the senses are purified, and senses will get purified by some regulations, whatever. Prabhupada has given a capsule to us, follow the regulated principles, and there are do's, you chant your rounds, you do some vrata of Ekadashi, and so very simple package. If we just follow that with determination and knowing that Lord, merciful Lord, will reveal himself to us by our efforts, because Srila Prabhupada has stated that, then we will one day reach to the perfection of this human life. Or else we will be like, or the living entity will be like a go-cutter. So with this, I'll just end my talk here and perhaps invite some questions and some comments. I'm sorry that I've crossed the limit of 8:30. I've taken 10, 11 minutes more. So if there is time, 5, 7 minutes, we can discuss. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, my humble obeisances to you. In the verse, the Brahma, the word Brahman means traveling, and I think in one of previous lecture, Prabhupada also mentions it as illusion as well. The Brahm, because Brahm means illusion. So we are traveling in illusion from whatever bodies we are, in illusion. In everybody, we are in an illusion. We are not seeing the truth.
Right.
So I just wanted to mention that. So it's a very wonderful class, absolutely wonderfully explained, and all the verses that you gave, they were really brilliant. Very nice. Thank you very much. Hare
Thank you,
Krishna.
Mataji. Good point, Mataji. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Yeah, so I particularly found this chapter in 6th canto, part 1, the chapter of Hansaguya prayers. It's an amazing prayers. If you do get time, please go through these prayers. They are quite rooted into the reality and very helpful in understanding the nature of the Lord and how we can come out of this bodily platform, understand that we are soul, there's a super soul, and somehow relate to these realities which are very, very remote to us right now. We are still at the platform of, we are struggling with our senses, mana sastani indriyani, prakriti sastani karshati. So like that, we are struggling. Now, to get beyond the senses is a big challenge for us. And therefore, reading this transcendental literature, which are windows to the spiritual world, will help us to understand our true nature and the nature of the Lord. And when we establish that connection with the Lord, then we can perhaps root out of this material birth, old age, and disease. And the chapter then will be closed for us, and the material chapter and the spiritual chapter can open for us. So it is definitely an illusion that we need to break. And that's very good. Thank you, Mataji, for sharing that. Brahman also means illusory. Brahma.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Which Hamsa Bhuya prayers are in which cantos? Canto 6.
Mataji, Canto 6th. And the prayers are mentioned in chapter 4th. This is Prajapati Daksha. He's offering these prayers, and by offering these prayers through his pure heart and purified senses, the Lord was very pleased with him, and then he appeared and gave darshan to him physically.
Lovely. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Okay, if there are no more classes, no more comments or questions, we may close the class in that case. If there is some, we still have around, well, we're run out of time now, 45 past 8. All right then. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhaya eva cha patitanam pavnebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advait Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare.
Hare
Srila
Krishna.
Prabhupada ki jai.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.